focusing on content, focusing on the tools that we use and the process that we apply, on the actual skills of the salesperson, and moving them to really focus on facilitating buyers' critical tasks. That's the concept of buyer enablement. Buying behavior is changing. We invented a term for that, like a buyer-led era. Basically, if you look at what's happening, champions, right, always close deals, but today more than ever, really buyers are closing deals, not sellers. And the biggest thing that I think could create that breakthrough for every sales leader is just running dedicated training around what it is like to be a buyer.
What are some of your predictions about like enablement? What's going to happen in 2-3 years from now?
Yeah, I think sales enablement current state is that it's
Hello everyone, this is Michael Ocean, founder and CEO of SellMeThisPen. Today I have the luxury of having Gal Aga on the call. He's a veteran B2B SaaS sales leader who scaled companies from $1 million to $100 million in ARR. 17 years in the trenches as a sales director, VP of sales, CRO, and now he's the CEO and co-founder at Aligned. And I'm going to let him actually, tell you guys a little bit more about Aligned and his vision. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. Gal, tell us all the stories. How did you end up in sales?
How did I end up in sales? Actually, I was fortunate enough to find the passion early on and start in sales. So yeah, I've been 17 years in SaaS B2B sales and found my way there quickly and found the passion. I think when I started, it was like inside sales and SaaS tech sales was like new words. And I remember the early days kind of learning everything from scratch, and basically was always passionate about building and about learning the profession, and always being a very, very big learner and ambitious, wanting to improve. So, just kind of found my path there and moved from account executive to enterprise account executive to doing, actually did a head of sales gig early on, which was kind of a deep into the deep water, which was bad, but taught me a lot. And then I came back to the AE route, went to a larger company to be a sales director after our company got acquired. So did the path as a sales director, managed a big team, did the path of 40 to 100 million ARR, then came to the VP sales path and built everything from scratch, did the 1 to 10 million, built a team, and from there went to a company called Anagogue as the CRO. And from there, kind of things led me here to Align. So I always knew that this day will come and this will be the direction, and I want to build something. But I think kind of sales is really one of the best paths for founders, CEOs. It's just incredible. Like the skills are so transferable, and you get beaten so much, right, by all the no's and everything. So you build the resilience. So it's very, very similar. And I would say I'm even less stressed today than I was when I was managing all the deals, which is crazy. That's the story.
That's amazing. Tell us a little bit more about Align, because it's such an exciting, product, and not only product vision that you guys are running. So I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about your vision. How did that, get started?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I can give you a really quick background on what it is, and then I can connect it maybe to the story. So really, in a nutshell, we're a customer-facing collaboration platform. For sales, it's called deal rooms or digital sales rooms. And for customer success, these are client portals and onboarding portals, which basically moves the chaotic back and forth over email attachments, links into just one space, one URL that you share with your customers. That just makes it easy to buy and helps solve deal complexity and just standardize the sales process. So it's really an end-to-end execution tool, that just solves for performance gaps directly by solving for buyers' challenges first. So it's the first time that there's just an end-to-end way to just solve for all of the buying challenges and fight buying indecision, really. and to fight the challenge of that we're seeing all in our deals today, that buyers are just avoiding salespeople more and more. So that's really the gist of it. And the story was that when I was selling at during my sales career, was when I was VP sales, my co-founder and I used to work together at the same company. And he was sales director. This was complex sales, six-figure deals, done, most of them remotely, even 400,000, 500,000 deals, sometimes even done remotely. So you had to be very, 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 very good at managing complex sales. And we were always kind of obsessed about the question, what makes the difference between the top performers and the rest? And one day it hit us when there was this deal, this really unique deal, this 400K deal that just got closed, outbound deal in 90 days, fully end-to-end from the moment that we had the first conversation. And this was really highly irregular. And basically, I won't forget that moment. We were sitting and raising a toast on a Friday just before leaving to the weekend. And the AE, when we asked her, what did you do differently? How did that happen? She says, this is really the first time that I've done this so different than every other time. I was really in this deal, I just wasn't selling. I was just offering buying process as a service. My entire focus was on creating great experience and facilitating buyers' internal tasks, their critical tasks, what they need to do next in the process. So that led us to kind of the big aha moment, the understanding that really top sellers, that's the secret sauce. They're not thinking about their next step, their discovery, or the medic that their manager needs, and their product and their solution, their ROI of their customers, or the close that they need. They're really just asking themselves all the time, how can I be helpful, and what is my customer going through right now, and how can I reduce friction? So they're really, really good at all of that, and I think that makes the big difference. So that really all led to the idea, and then we basically understood that just the complexity of the deal is hard to manage, and the complexity of buying, there's nothing just that's driving that behavior. So the whole idea really for Align was born out of that, and we saw that really the actual workflow is just a mess. Okay, you're sending emails back and forth with tons of links and attachments, and a mutual action plan sits in a spreadsheet, which is another email and another area to collaborate in. And maybe you're sending a Google Doc and you're creating a business case. So these are the more advanced sellers. But even just the regular transactional selling is an email summary with 5 links, and then more follow-ups and more follow-ups with more things. And just people get looped in at various points of the process. And what happens is decision resources just fall through the cracks. People get looped in at various points of the process, and they don't know where you are. And so they're struggling really to understand how to sell you internally, why to buy, and how to buy, right? So really, that's where the idea came from. Let's build a tool that will just create a better communication, workflow, and collaboration between the buyer and the seller, and it will solve a lot of that.
I love that. It like the best companies, at least based on my experience, really, starts from the founder's experiences, right? So you guys walk through this process. You saw your AE high performing, and you compare it with with the rest of activities in the past. Said, how the hell did that happen? Can we replicate this behavior? So Gal, as you were saying, there is a process for buyer enablement. So I'm really curious to hear about that process. If you can share with us, is there maybe a framework sales leaders can follow today?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, for sales leaders and for both reps, basically buyer enablement as a concept is a strategic framework for how we interact with customers. So it's not a sales methodology. It's not a tactic. And it's not a go-to-market strategy. It's just basically a term coined by Gartner that basically entails kind of the entire framework of how do we interact, and it basically applies it to the entire go-to-market motion. So focusing on content, focusing on the tools that we use and the process that we apply, and on the actual skills of the salesperson, and moving them to really focus on buyers' critical tasks, right? Facilitating buyers' critical tasks. That's the concept of buyer enablement. And the way really to apply it, so as a sales leader, there are things that you can do in the entire process to make the process really more buyer-led or more adaptable. But in practice, really, it means for salespeople, it means just more focus on selling with the buyer, a champion enablement, champion building, and more focused on selling between meetings, right? Facilitating buying that happens without you. So more selling between meetings. And lastly, is just to focus on making the buying experience easier as a whole. So where it can get more tactical is thinking about champion building and working with the champion. This is where you can apply this in a bit more tactical ways. If we stay at the mindset just space for a second, basically the seller-centric selling is about selling to our prospects, right? It's about us trying to just run through the motion of our sales stages. I need to do a discovery, I need to do a demo, I need to finish the POC. So it's really a lot about the stages that I need to get to as a seller. And the sales process a lot of times is just designed this way. It's not designed in the names and in the exit criteria and in the actual activities that you run to think a lot about what the buyer needs. And that's kind of the more sales-centric approach that used to work more on the growth at all costs, but now we could just get away with it. It was never the right thing. And really the focus was on how do we do more on sellers' efficiency. And it was all about sellers' approach was all about giving information. Okay. The seller is in the front, the seller gives a lot of information. The buyer really needs the seller for information. And the shift really in the mindset of selling to buyer enablement, or the way that I call it from a mindset point of view, I call it buying process as a service, is really about you're no longer pushing the meetings, you're focused on internal stages of the buyer, right? How do you enable the champion? How do you do a lot of activities between calls that just understand where buyers is at any given moment and how you can best support their internal tasks. In addition to you have a process, and of course you want to recommend going through it. So that's one mindset. Another one is you're just focusing all the time on reducing friction and creating a good experience. So your focus is all the time coming from the buyer's shoes. And the last piece is you're not focused on giving information, rather you're helping solve for indigestion. So you understand that your prospect's problem is not that they need more information from you, they need you to really digest it and simplify everything around the category and how to buy. So that's from a mindset perspective. And if we get tactical, then I think that the area where we can maybe dive a bit more into and really break down is champion enablement. So if you think about just selling with champion skills, then sellers and sales leaders can go and think about how do we implement a business case selling, right? So a lot of teams just, think about the business case as something that maybe in some very big deal they'll do and help a little bit with, or they're thinking that the business case is just an ROI calculator that they send, but it's much more than that. It's something that you can really standardize across the team and teach, right? That the business case is probably an activity that your buyer will need to go through, unless they're in a budgeted project that is just about vendor selection right now. So if there's going to be a budget discussion, internal decision where they really need to create a compelling case, help them build the language in 1 or 2 pages that really well articulates the why they need to buy and why now, right? So business case is a skill. Mutual action plan is another example of deep champion and buyer collaboration skill. Co-designing buying assets in general, so working with how to co-build ROI calculators or total cost of ownership, or calculate the cost of not doing anything, the inaction. These are skills that you can teach. You can think about teaching co-designing solutions, like use cases. A lot of companies go in and have built in their process like a use case workshop. Okay, so knowing how to do these kind of things, I think tailoring resources, teaching sellers that it's not just about running to the classic stages. If you identify a situation where maybe you want to build the requirements, you want to build a market comparison deck that's really tailored to what they need right now. So how to tailor and facilitating internal discussions, testing your champion, and when to switch champions. Okay, all of these are just various skills that you can go and build a world of training around and coaching around to just help sellers do better and in enabling their buyers to buy.
I love it. You shared a lot of great stuff. I have many questions, but I want to start with the first part, which is the mindset and the processes that we build around, the status quo mindset that we have. How do we really, as sales leaders, first and foremost, starting with ourselves, go about changing our mindset? Because we are used to, again, having methodologies or frameworks in place, because at some point when your organization grows to a certain size and you get to some maturity, and considering the fact, most of our audience are in mid-market and enterprise space, so you need to build that standardization around your framework. So how do we really, bring that mindset shift, starting, with ourselves and our enablement teams, and before we go for our reps, before we bring any change to our sales org, how should we do that?
Yeah, so to answer these questions, so one thing is really teaching these skills. So we covered skills, right? And beyond that, teaching the skills, I think that one of the biggest things that we're missing when we're running training is we just keep saying, hey, be helpful, right? That's like every sales leader has this mantra, right? Like
add value, be helpful.
Add value, be helpful, exactly. You're not adding value, you're not adding value. And most salespeople really struggle to get it, right? Because it's really this high level thing. How do I add value? And am I doing it right? Like, because they've never been in their shoes. They don't know they don't know how to really, what it is to really be on the other side and to go through a buying process and to go through a demo where you're going through interrogation, right? So they don't know. And so just to say, be helpful or add value, just doesn't help. It's not helpful. Okay. Yeah. So one thing that you can do is of course go a bit deeper and show them how to be helpful. That gets you to a certain point, right? With these tactics and bringing it to a tactical level, business cases and co-designing and teaching them how to build ROI, how to do cost of inaction and these things the right way. Okay. Versus just saying, hey, go and do it. But another thing is, what about training them about buying? The biggest aha moment that my reps at previous companies had, and I always had about selling, was when I was buying. Okay, so the biggest thing that I think could create that breakthrough for every sales leader is just running dedicated training around what it is like to be a buyer, bringing buyer behavior research, okay? Preferences, Gen Z, Gen Y, how do they behave, flatter hierarchy, consensus building. There are a lot of statistics, a lot of research around these things and how people buy and how they below the line versus above the line behave in a purchasing process. And reps just don't know. They don't know what a budgeting process is. Okay, and what does it mean to do annual budgeting and to ask for a new budget and that people have multiple levels of budget approvals? When are you learning this? From your champion. Okay, you're basically you're in the field, okay, as a soldier, learning by just running and trying to, and making mistakes, right? So I think that's one big way that you do it. Just get them to understand the other side. And the practical way is really bringing the research. Another practical way is to bring your CFO, your CEO, your VPs, and actual prospects that you've sold to to tell stories, okay, about how they buy, what are the best experience, what are the worst experiences they've had with AEs, what is a great demo, what is their worst demo experience, what do they want from a salesperson, what do they don't want, what do they, why do they ghost salespeople? Like, think about these sessions. They're so valuable, and teach them about the buying journey. Okay, a lot of salespeople just don't know that there's these stages, the awareness and solution exploration, and how complex it is, and how they can go through a lot of these things, and processes just keeps changing. Everyone go through on a high level through pretty much the same milestones, but it just changes so much. And so there's the high level understanding of how a buying journey looks like, but there's the more specific practical understanding of how buyers typically buy from you. So that's also another thing that a rep typically will learn just a few months, because you're taught the sales process. Here's what you need to do. Okay, you need to go and do a POC or some kind of a workshop, and then a proposal, and okay, and then there's legal and security, and they do all of these things. Okay, and you do all of these things. Okay, so that's okay, right? But do they come to us with predefined requirements? How often did that happen? Okay, how many vendors do they typically come to us with in their long list, and when do they shortlist typically? When we initiate it and there's no active project, how much time does that happen? When that happens, what do they typically need to do internally? Do they start all the time trying our product a little bit, and then they contact us, and then they start to go for an official proof of concept? Like, okay, teach them the exact process that they go to at each one of your stages of the sales process. What are all of the variations of the things that they typically do throughout these stages, so you'll know, okay, that they can do it, right? So we're teaching, really, if you look at most of these sales processes, the way that they're built is, we need to go from this stage, which is our outcome, not their outcome, okay, to this stage, our outcome, okay, and the stage is to end the POC, the stage is to send a proposal, and then the activities are to loop in a few more people, and for them to give us the thing that we need to run the POC, and to prepare the environment, and to loop in the SE. So what does the seller do? Because the sales process is designed this way, the seller basically is in the mindset of, okay, I just need to push these things. I need to push someone through that. But if in your sales process you would write underneath it, okay, first of all, you call the names in the stages in different names. You call them in a way that describes what they're going through, and the exit criteria are related to actual things that the buyer is doing. Achieved consensus, okay? Achieve alignment on evaluation criteria and commitment to progress to a POC, okay? These are actual criteria that we can measure that really move the buyer down an actual sales process, right? That really progresses the deal. The goal of the sales process is to progress the buying process. So if you just progressed your stages and you did the next call that you needed to do, it might still be in 20% probability stage one, even though you're now doing activity that's supposed to be like a 30 or 50% probability, right? So have exit criteria that are tied to what they need to accomplish, names that are tied to what the buyer needs to accomplish, and give breakdown next to the things that you do of all the things that they typically do during these phases. Typically, they build requirements, and they want to see the integration to the CRM, and they want to see this, and they loop in RevOps, and they loop in sales enablement. We have this, right? I'm just reading out of my mind like things that we have in our sales process. They loop in this person and that person. So all of these things, our AEs know that we're right now here, and they would either recommend that buyers will, to our prospect, that they will do these next steps because they know that this is how most of their buyers buy, or they know to anticipate, right? And they know what to do in order to support each one of these steps that their buyers take when they're at that stage of the process.
Oh, it's absolutely fascinating. You know why? Because this mindset will challenge so many things, like starting from sales methodology just to begin with. Because to your point,
Yeah,
everything we do is about us. So naturally, salespeople get trained and build that mindset that I need to take from stage 1 to 2 to 3. So get them closer to the close, stage. But to your point, we never talk about the buyer journey when it comes to the sales process. Like, how do they buy? So typically, when we do training, like sales and seller enablement, is around, even if they do a great job, like about our ICP or personas we are selling inside the ICP or industry or whatever, we focus on their day to day, and we do our training around. Let's look at how the CFO's life go on a day to day basis in this kind of industry. But we don't actually look at it as a whole, as a sales process. What's the role of CFO in this sales process? What other stakeholders in that process do to help themselves push the deal forward? And we do it just backward. First, starting
yeah,
with methodology, and then again, do we understand our buyer personas during the sales process, not as just an individual and their activities and
yeah,
goals inside the organization? It's
exactly.
really interesting.
And the methodologies, by the way, they're not like everything that I'm talking about just doesn't change the methodology. It's not that's why it's not a methodology. You can use gap selling and challenger, and a lot of these are just different ways to approach asking questions or educating. Okay, but I'm just talking about a really holistic, strategic approach to your go-to-market. Okay, across the content that you build, across the role of sales enablement, across the skills of the seller, across how you design your sales process, and the tools that you buy. Okay, that's the idea. So it really blends well with everything else.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And again, speaking about go to market from top of funnel, getting to the close, and after that, it's another topic, and I'd really love to have you again. So, based on your experience, like you've seen, the bar process shifting right now. The mindset is different. People have access to do their own research. They don't want to talk to salespeople. And with AI and everything is happening around all these technology advancements, well, naturally, push buyers to have different buying processes. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai. What do you see like sales enablement going from today, let's say, to the next 2 to 3 years with all the changes that are happening today?
So let's maybe start with looking at the situation. So we were all, or most of us, I think, have been through the economic downturn, and we were in the growth at all cost, where I said basically earlier, we were just able to get away with having that sales-centric approach that I mentioned a few times during this conversation, both from how we design our sales process, from how the level of execution of salespeople, and to multiple fronts. And you said at some point in the conversation, buyers really, a lot of them avoid salespeople. And how did we end up in that position? Then it's just a result of few things. First and foremost, the strongest part is just they're fed up with being sold to. Okay, being seller-centric just means that the buyer feels like you're that seller that sells to me rather than works with me to solve a problem, advisor, consultant, right? Consultative selling, solution selling, all of these words. But that's the idea. And what we did is we used to hire, armies of SDRs and who went through 16-step sequences and played the numbers game. And there's a lot of companies right now writing about that on LinkedIn, right? So that's really a result of just things failing to work over time, because at growth at all costs, we could basically money was cheap. It was a ZERP era, and these things used to work. But it's also relevant for AEs. We just had a lot of people that went out there on rookie level and had the feature focused demos and interrogation, discovery, and everything we talked about. And you add to that just buying is more complex. Okay, if you look at it, there's a lot of research around that, but there are 21% more categories in 2 years. And when you look at statistics and you look at the number of information that we have, there's just so much more, right? We can have podcasts and webinars and LinkedIn, everything. There's advice everywhere. So people are just overwhelmed overall in general. So that overwhelm and that increase in options just create more complexity. And the fact that also there are more stakeholders involved and budget scrutiny just made things more complex. And then in addition to that, just buying behavior is changing. We call it, we invented a term for that, like a buyer-led era. And basically, if you look at what's happening, champions, right, always close deals, but today more than ever, really buyers are closing deals, not sellers, and we're supporting them because a few things, like in a few years, just everyone are used to self-serve. Like everything that you buy, almost everything has that self-service option. And while some salespeople maybe listening to this are not selling PLG, right, self-service, but it's a habit. Okay, I'm used to self-serve as a buyer. And I'm used to also self-research. Okay, so I go to ChatGPT and I ask questions. So we're getting used to all of these things. In addition to that, 71% of buyers are right now Gen Z, and all of that resulted in a situation that buyers really can do more on their own. So if you're not really doing a good enough job to support them, right? And if buying is more complex and they can do more on their own and they're just fed up with being sold to, the result is just more avoiding salespeople. And really the latest stat from Gartner says that 75% of buyers prefer a seller-free experience, but they have higher chance of regret. So it's not that they don't need a salesperson. It's just that that's the situation.
This is amazing. The only question, that popped up in my mind when you were explaining, it's like, okay, it seems like the job of a seller is changing. It's already, it should be changed by now, but again, it's happening because of buyers' behavior. They don't want it the same way that they experienced in the past. So what would be the tactical advice here for a seller who's selling for a company who already have a strategy in place with PLG or self-serve, let's say, options? How should they go about interacting with their clients? Let's say someone is just signing up to a self-serve account, start using it. What you guys are doing differently right now that others can actually replicate and get take some advantage from?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of the tactic before that. It's basically the things that I said with driving that buying process as a service mentality and really learning how to just be more helpful, more valuable, and how to facilitate buyers' jobs to be done, their internal tasks by champion enablement and by knowing how to really sell well between meetings, how to follow up properly, and how to multi-thread, and loop in and build consensus among larger groups of stakeholders. So I think that we're today, complex sales is no longer a synonym for enterprise sales. Everyone needs to learn complex selling skills because of these changes. Because you can't have the transactional mindset of just doing the few steps that you do. You have to think about accessing, influencing more people, building consensus, facilitating internal steps. So it's a bit more advanced selling. So I would say that whatever you're selling, even if it's SMB, just you have to learn these skills. And I'm interviewing for an SMB AE, by the way, and I'm interviewing really great AEs that know how to do these things for SMB, for transactional, a low 5-figure, even some entry 4-figure. We have PLG, and then it transitions to SMB sales. So yeah, I'm seeing these reps out there, and I'm optimistic from that regard. They're really doing a great job. So that's really the idea. And if you think about it, you just need to be. If you're not valuable, why would I introduce you to my colleagues and help multi-thread? If you're not valuable enough and supporting these internal buying steps, why would I not do just the minimum with you? Hey, send me a proposal. Hey, I need this demo. Why would I go and work with you on a business case or on more things? So my default as a buyer would be to ghost you, to leave you single-threaded, maybe if you're not helpful enough, then I'm also ending up stuck in indecision, okay? Or if you're not helpful enough that someone else was, then I'm buying from another vendor, because that rep just made me feel so good about their ability to understand what I need and to help me throughout this process, which increased also my confidence that not only the sale will go well, that the actual project, right, what I'm trying to accomplish will probably happen because I'm in the right hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. It's really interesting that it seems like, again, there's some AEs that you're interviewing right now. They already upskill themselves. They're ready to walk the path that is going to be the future. So for enablement, what would you see, and what are some of your predictions about like enablement? What's going to happen in 2-3 years from now?
Yeah, I think sales enablement today, the current state is that it's internal focused and it's not solving the problems that we're talking about. It's not helping the seller be more buyer-centric, and it's not solving the buyers avoiding salespeople. Because if you look at most of the functions, the way that from all the conversation that I'm having, at least, it's really built a lot. It's not going beyond just being learning and development, facilitating the training, and managing the content and the tech stack. Also, it's really mostly a glorified Google Drive, so that really does very little there. And sales enablement, in order to really, there's an irony here, none of this really enables the seller to close more deals, is just create some internal efficiencies. So to really go and solve the gap, you have to make sure that enablement is as much as possible internal and external focused. And the external focus is really buyer enablement, and sales enablement is really to focus a lot on the buyer's challenges that we talked about. So it starts with defining enablement's function as a strategic function for both sellers and buyers, to measure it on actual revenue metrics, to measure it on buyer surveys, how much we're being ghosted, stage progression, a lot of these things that that you're creating a better buying experience to people. What's the quality of the business cases that my reps are creating? That's one. Another one would be to go and create more cross-department efforts and create really a link of how enablement just works with everyone, with product, with CS, with marketing, with sales, to really support and improve the buying journey. It's also about integrating content that really solves buyers' critical task. I think the whole content piece is just a joke, like a case study. I've not seen a lot of case studies that are real case studies. And that there's just a volume game there as well. How do we create buying guides, business case templates, right? The things that are really solving buyers' problems. And just doing a lot of the other things that we talked about, right? Tracking the buying process and the selling process and adapting them together, and teaching these buyer enablement techniques that we talked about earlier. So all of these things, it has to be the future. Like, someone needs to own, if you have enablement and you want it to really be effective, it has to be effective and improve skills. And I think overall with AI, I don't think that there's a message anytime soon. Like, it's not that 2-3 years from now, sellers would be out of a job. I'm not seeing that happening, and we're tracking things very, very, very closely. I think that we'll need enablement more than ever. I think that AI will lead transactional processes. Okay, people will be able to jump on calls with an avatar or not, or are you really human? Looks like a human and talk, and it will follow up a little bit. But the more complex tasks, that's where the seller will specialize. So if the seller is going to specialize in the more complex tasks, and the buyer will have AI, right? The buyer will directly ask, hey, take all of these vendor materials and give me some quick answers, help me build a business case. The AI, for today, I can do this with ChatGPT, by the way. I can build a business case based on everything that the seller sent me if I have a good framework and I can feed it to ChatGPT. So all of this will happen would just mean that the seller will be much, much more focused on the really high value activities. So it's just more of what we've talked about the entire call. It's just going to go more and more to the extreme, and sellers will have to be just a complex selling, good fundamentals. So you have to have enablement that knows how to do that the best possible way.
Amazing. Look, guys, I'm going to get Gal on the call again because I think we need to we need to break this down. There's a lot to cover, but really do appreciate you taking the time. Gal, just to wrap it up, if someone wants to reach out, first and foremost, can they and how?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a bit slow on DMs, but reach out. I answer everything.
Amazing. Guys, I learned a lot. Hopefully you learn a lot as well. And until next time, bye for now.